Good morning again. This is good afternoon or good evening, wherever you may be watching us from. This is Chaplain Colonel Ike Eweama, the Command Chaplain for the 63rd Readiness Division. And in the former segment, we talked about where you are stuck. Today, we're going to reflect on what is in a name. What is in a name? Many of us are answering names that we do not even know what they mean. My name full is Ike Chukwu, India Kilo Echo, Charlie Hotel Uniform, Kilo Whiskey Uniform, which means the power of Almighty God. What's your name? As a priest, people have asked me whether I have always known that I will be in the ordained ministry because of my name. And certainly, yes, I answer. And the answer is always yes. My father told me why he gave me that name and that he dedicated me to God from the womb before I was born. So what is in your name? I am not therefore surprised that my greatest desire in life, in the midst of other viable alternatives, has always been doing what I'm doing now. As a priest, as a chaplain, and as a soldier. A great deal may be in a name, especially a name which one chooses for oneself. In the last segment, we talked about this woman whose name is Naomi, which means pleasantness. She changed her name to Mara, which means bitterness, because of what she felt that God did to her, or life did to her, and she blamed God for it. But it is well to remember that at that time, the ancients regarded adversity as a punishment from God for personal sin, as if good and evil were always repaid in a temporal or material manner. Naomi, as we know, was forthright with her feelings. Rather than hiding behind right answers, like we do often, many times we find ourselves in the situation that she found herself, but we continue giving excuses for God, even when we feel abandoned by God and mankind. Many of us, even in our own pious logic, even though we feel better about God and our neighbors, yet we hide under the guise of good. Yet many times our bitterness beclouds our vision. So it was with Naomi. She couldn't see the Lord trying to bless her through her daughter-in-law, whose name is Ruth. Even when she played, the daughter-in-law said to her, as she was in this quagmire, "Do not ask me to abandon or forsake you, for wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God shall be my God." That's the response that Ruth gave to Naomi when Naomi wanted her to leave after the son died. Naomi was so stuck in her heart that hoping for anything beyond her suffering may have seemed too dangerous, which is ironically what many of us do. So she decided to wall herself to protect her heart from further disappointment. She was actually locking herself in with pain, like many of us do. Sometimes when we feel that the world has done something wrong, we try to wall ourselves in, not realizing that the real lasting healing begins only when we open ourselves to the healer. Even though our wounds may ache and sting when exposed, if we try to put band-aids in our hearts instead, when we peel it off or rip it off, the scabs are left open, leaving us just as raw, and the wounds never heal. The Bible is one of the big pictures of God's intervention. From the beginning of Genesis to the end of Revelation, he can't seem to stop involving himself with us. So even while we are bitterly accusing God of failing to act, he is always intervening. That's what I just want you to understand, that in the situation that you find yourself in, God is always intervening, especially like in the case of Naomi. God breaks through when he moved the daughter-in-law, who is also a grieving widow, if you remember, to initiate a change. So, determined to start a new life and give her mother-in-law hope, she begins to work as a gleaner, as a cleaner, but in a nearby barley field. As it turns out, Ruth finds herself in the midst of her father-in-law's relative, who not only notices and welcomes her, but also shows her extraordinary favor. Dear friends, God's provisions are always embedded in his deprivations. Just take note of that. God's provisions are always embedded in his deprivations. Naomi's eyes opened suddenly when God's intervention came in the life that her daughter-in-law is now beginning to live. She remembers God's provision that God made long time ago in their culture, that a relative who marries a widow and takes care of her late husband's estate and family line, and that relative now, Naomi remembers, is Boaz. Now, Boaz fits the bill. You know, God's wonder is different from what we think. Ruth caught his fancy. You know, Dr. Larry Crabb paraphrases Naomi's revelation in Ruth 2:20 by, "The Lord has not discarded me. He's always been there. But now I see his kind heart at work. My pain is still real. I have felt it keenly for 10 years. But now I'm beginning to realize the shape of a dream that's bigger than every dream I have so valued." Because she allowed her daughter-in-law to have some stake in her own pain. When we feel God has apparently deprived us, that is always when he is intervening for us. The story just gets even better. Naomi now initiates a meeting between Ruth and her husband's kinsman, because in their tradition, the kinsman could marry the widow in order to raise family for the dead children. Like we know, as the story ended, Ruth eventually gets married to Boaz, and they had a son named Obed. Everyone praises God for what he's done in the midst of this particular family. But the credit keeps rolling, letting us know that Obed, that I'm talking about, became the grandfather of King David, who was, of course, the ancestor of Jesus, the Messiah. The beautiful snapshot of a journey of faith in which God never stopped working, turning the most bitter spring into sweet water, saying, "I am the Lord who heals you." That's what God is saying to you today. I am the Lord who heals you. God's apparent time of delay is not always denial. And many times it is the incubator, that delay becomes the incubator of his blessings. We have probably all shared in Naomi's bitterness at some point in our lives. In hindsight, no matter how little we understand of those dark times, it's hard to deny that God has actually been enlarging our territory by way of the very pain from which we initially ran away from. If we would believe, the Lord often allows and creatively transforms our pain for his love-driven purposes. He doesn't stop working on our behalf, That's what I want you to understand today. Even when it seems he's ignoring our needs, no matter what you are going through, God didn't bring, remember, Elimelech or Mahlon or Chilion back from the dead. He never did that. He didn't give Naomi a happy, prosperous life with her husband or her sons and their children as she hoped. But he planted new seeds where those trees died. God didn't give Naomi a new family. Ruth, Boaz, and Obed to replace the beloved people she lost. He gave Naomi himself. He filled the void in her life that no person had ever been able to fill. And he did it through both her loss and his unexpected abundance. Therefore, when you feel betrayed by God, always remember that God gives us what we need and not always what we want. And that his divine plan, purposes, and provisions are not predicated on the limits we impose upon him. He often allows our pain for his love-driven purpose. He does not stop working on our behalf even when it seems he is ignoring our needs. So what is in your name?